I think the letters I've gotten from teachers and students alike have been really encouraging. A lot of people tend to think history is just this drab series of boring names and dates that you just have to connect to pass the test. And really, history is a living thing. We are where we are today. We are who we are today because of our history. We go into the future bringing our history with us. And if we don't learn the mistakes of history, we're doomed to repeat them. And these are exciting times we're living in now. Look at what's going on in Eastern Europe. No one could have predicted this during most of my lifetime. If someone had said to me, the Berlin Wall is going to come down in a few months, I would have thought they were out of their mind. And here it is, it's happening. I mean, the premier of the Soviet Union is meeting with the Pope. These are interesting times, people. Times they are a-changing. Dylan said this back in the 60s. But I always find history to be a fascinating thing. I'm very interested in why things are the way they are today. Why are we here? Why are we like this? Why is the world the way it is? And it's because of what happened before. And if this has helped to stimulate an interest in history, especially recent history, because things have happened very quickly in my lifetime, in this century, I think time has accelerated a tremendous amount. There's a great deal to try to absorb because of the communications explosion, too. But it's all very interesting. I find that the truth is much more interesting than fiction. And if the song has helped generate interest in it, then that's a good thing. The idea for the song, We Didn't Start the Fire, came from my own desire actually to be a history teacher, my own love of history, and also a conversation I had with someone who was younger than me, who was complaining about growing up in these troubled times, and my response was, well, I felt the same way when I was your age. And the comeback was, well, at least you had a childhood in the 50s, and everyone knows that nothing happened in the 50s, which was a particularly silly statement to make, because a lot of things happened in the 50s. There was the Suez Canal crisis, there was the Korean War, the Hungarian freedom fighters, and well, all kinds of things happened. So I started writing out all the things that came off the top of my head from the year I was born, 1949. And I was born when a man named Harry Truman was president. So the first thing I wrote was Harry Truman. That represents that era of the 40s to me. The late 40s was Harry Truman's time. And then to counterbalance a political figure, I thought I would mention a popular singer at the time, popular pop singer, Doris Day. Now, 1949 was also the year that China became communist. There we go, Red China. And to counterbalance that, I threw in a guy who was probably the first rock and roll star, Johnny Ray. He would always break down crying when he was singing, Johnny Ray. So what I've done is mix politics and popular culture. And that sort of set the tone for the rest of the song. Walter Winchell was a famous columnist. South Pacific was a very famous Broadway musical at the time. And Joe DiMaggio was probably the most famous athlete of that era. So now you've got show business, pop singers, politicians, athletes, and geography. And it made for an interesting songwriting process. And I kept going in that vein to the year 1950, 51, 52, so on and so forth. And then on to the chorus, which is We Didn't Start the Fire. In other words, boy, the world's always been kind of messed up. And it was messed up before I was born, and it was messed up during the time I lived, and it'll probably be messed up after I'm gone. That doesn't mean you don't try to do the best you can to make it a better world, but you don't give up and fall into despair just because you can't change the entire world. You change what you can. A lot of these things I wrote off the top of my head. I didn't pick up a big book and just look through it and write things down. I've been an avid reader of history, and I didn't even graduate high school. I'm pretty much self-taught. but all my learning came from books. And to this day, I've got 4 or 5 books going at the same time. My favorite thing to do, aside from be with my family and go fishing, is to read and to play the piano, too. I've gotten a lot of questions about 1960. The year starts with U2. Now, a lot of people come and say, gee, I didn't know that band was out in 1960. I said, I don't mean the band, I mean the spy plane. Oh, what's the U2 spy plane? Well, look it up. It's a fascinating story. Francis Gary Powers, and it wrecked the summit that was supposed to happen in Vienna between Khrushchev and the American president. And it was a turning point in history, the U2 flight. People go, what's Syngman Rhee? And he was the president of Korea, of South Korea. It was a real big political issue at the time. Well, what's Dien Bien Phu? A lot of people may not know the French were fighting in Vietnam 2 decades before we were. They were in a morass. They were in a swamp in Vietnam. They couldn't get out, and they got defeated very badly at this place called Dien Bien Phu, which is what made the French withdraw from Indochina. Something maybe we should have learned from. Maybe had we talked a little bit more about it, we might not have gotten hung up there. So all these things, it's not just about America, it's about the world too. We live in a world community. And especially as we get to the end of the song, we've got hypodermics on the shore. That's a sad statement on the world. It's no longer just politics anymore. It's the planet. It's universal. It's not just world politics. It's the universe now. We may end up destroying ourselves just by choking on our own garbage. So we have to know a lot more about each other. We have to be more cognizant about what's going on in the rest of the world. It's not just as simple as life in America, as complicated as that is. I would advise young people who are looking for advice as to how, to make the world a better place. What can I do? What can I do to help change things, to make life better? I'd say be the best you can be. Get as much information as you can. Be as smart as you can. Be as knowledgeable as you can. Study. Learn about yourself. Find out what your potential is and develop it. Because what makes the world a better place is usually individual efforts which inspire others. The people who have made a difference to me in my world were people like Beethoven and Mark Twain. They inspired me to do what I do. And I hope I've inspired other people to do what they can do. But human potential is a fantastic thing. And the more you know, the better you're going to be, and the better the world will be ultimately.